Well, welcome to this week's edition of Retire Simply DFW, the show that helps you navigate the complexities of your retirement. I'm your host, Kristin Oakley, and I'm joined today by the co-founders of Compass Retirement, Scott and Angela Winstead. It's always a great day to be with the Winsteads. How are you all this week?
Oh my gosh, we're fantastic and busy.
So pumped up to be here. Yeah, very busy though. Very busy. Yeah.
I know, because you've been getting a lot of folks calling in from the show and coming in to meet with you, right?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, the floodgates have opened.
Yes.
And we are so just blessed to be able to help folks, help them plan for their retirement and guide them along. But yeah, it's great.
Yep, we love it. We're prepared. We've had our team, just excited, and they're loving visiting with everybody. So we're getting all types of different people throughout the Metroplex. So it's really a blast.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm so grateful that you are back in the studio, because I know we have another huge topic to unpack today for our viewers at home. The Simply acronym that you all have trademarked as part of your process to help folks retire simply. We're going to be talking about the L today in Simply, which stands for less to the IRS. Who doesn't want to do that, right? Who doesn't want to pay less to the IRS? We don't want to pay any more than we have to. So, my gosh, I know one of the things that you talk through with folks is, should they pay taxes now or pay tax later? So let's start with that. Unpack that a little bit. What does that actually mean for folks?
Yeah, Kristin, it's a great question. And when we're talking about less to the IRS, to your point, who doesn't want to pay less, right? It's that old saying, I think it was Benjamin Franklin, right? There's only two certainties in life.
Yep.
Death and taxes. And we've all heard that. And I really dislike that. No offense to Ben. But here's the deal. It makes you feel like you have no control, right? You're going to die and you just have to pay taxes.
Right.
And it's not necessarily that we're going to show you a way that you don't have to pay taxes, but what we're going to show you a way is that you can control how, when, and how much you pay.
How, when, how much.
Yeah.
Very, very important
and they're
distinguishers.
those are important things, and put the control back into your power versus just feeling like taxes are something that just happened to you.
Right, it's just the way that it is.
Yeah.
You can't do anything about it. Right.
And so when we talk about tax, again, staying on the theme of Retire Simply, where we take very complex things and boil it down and make it really easy, the first thing we always like to kind of level set the conversation with is, what are the different types of taxed accounts folks can really have? And like, how can you break these down into easy categories? And so we break them down into three. Okay.
Yep.
So the first is what we would say is taxed always, or taxed forever. Okay. Then the next would be taxed sometimes. And then the last would be taxed never. Right? And so that's really, if someone thinks about their retirement and their different accounts and all of that, their accounts are going to fit in one of those three buckets. Right?
Yep.
We either pay tax on all the money, we pay tax on some of the money, we pay tax on none of the money. Now, I don't know where most people fall in, but I know the one I'd want all my money in,
tax never, please.
That's right.
And we talk all the time about diversification in our portfolio. It's really important to talk about tax diversification.
Yes.
So that's why Scott's sharing with everybody the three different types of tax that we have in those accounts, and how important diversification in your taxes, which a lot of people haven't thought of, but how important that is to think about.
And we see so many people in the Metroplex that have done such a good job of saving. And, they're going to have, Social Security and maybe a pension, and they live well within their means. We spend an enormous amount of our planning around helping people strategize around taxes when they have to start taking money out of things that are going to cause a lot of tax, right? So if you think about it like this, with those three buckets, if I just had, three buckets up here, and I just said, hey, grab all your statements and take the ones that are taxed always and throw it in the bucket. Take the statements that are taxed sometimes and throw it in that bucket, and then take the tax that's never those accounts and throw it in those buckets. What we would see, that's probably true for most people, is the first bucket, taxed always, is filled up to the top. The second one, taxed sometimes, about halfway up, and then the tax nevered is very, very few statements would land in there.
Well, and that's happening because now that the burden of retirement is placed on our shoulders, pensions for most folks are a thing of the past. You've been saving in all these tax deferred accounts. Translation, taxed later, right?
right.
It's going to be taxed always, but you're just kicking that can down the road.
Exactly. So, you know, the types of accounts that fall into there, right? The 401k, the traditional IRA, the 403b if you're a teacher, the TSP account potentially if you're a civil servant, right? But these accounts are the ones that, to your point, hey, we don't pay tax when we put the money in. We're not paying tax as it grows, but we are going to be taxed on every single penny that comes out of that thing, right? And again, you really have no control over it, right? The IRS is going to set what the rates are. The federal government's going to set what the rates are. Then we have those accounts that you're taxed sometimes on. That would be, you know, money that you put into an account that you already paid some tax on, and when you invest that money, when it grows, whether that may be through income, a fancy way of saying that's just a dividend, but it's really just income that you earned, right? You could be taxed on that. You could be taxed on the growth, meaning if I bought something at $10 and I sold it at $100, on that $90 I made, I'll be taxed on. So that's a taxed sometimes account, right? And there's different types in there, you know, short-term and long-term and all that. And then the tax never accounts are the ones that, hey, when I put the money in, I didn't get a tax deduction when it went in. But all the growth I get, I don't pay tax. All the withdrawals I take, I don't pay tax. And if anything's left over in that bucket when I die, whoever's going to pick up that bucket and take it home with them, they don't have to pay any taxes. I mean, to me, that's the best of all the worlds, right? And unfortunately, the IRS just limits us on what types of accounts can do that. One I bet most folks have heard of, it's called a Roth account, right? Now, that could be a Roth IRA or Roth 401k, but it also could be a type of financial tool that very few people are that familiar with called permanent life insurance, right? And so there's certain types of life insurance that actually, I believe, offer even greater tax benefits than even something like a Roth IRA, a little bit more flexibility as well. So what we want to do, the name of the game when we're talking about paying tax now versus later, is how do you get all the statements in the taxed always bucket over to the tax never bucket as cheaply and quickly as possible while taxes are on sale?
Well, we're definitely going to unpack that. I know folks are dying to know how to do that, right? To move them from the taxed always to the tax never bucket. We are going to have to take a quick commercial break. But before we do, what would you like to say to someone who's maybe never thought about it in this way before?
Oh, well, what I would say is, hey, you're just like everyone else. Most people, when they come into our office, almost all of their accounts are in that taxed always bucket. So if that's you, don't feel bad about it. Let's just take some action. Let's take a peek at it. Let's see how we can get moved over into the tax never again bucket as fast as we can and as efficiently as we can. So if you're 3 to 5 years away from retiring, or maybe you're already retired and you've saved $300,000 or more, this is the type of planning that you need. And we would love to help you. If you want it to be simple and efficient, this is the right place. So give us a call. Let us walk you through that. We are just here waiting to help you.
Angela, Scott, thank you so much. To our viewers at home, we encourage you to pick up the phone and call the number on the bottom of your screen to get started on your very own complimentary Retire Simply plan from Compass Retirement. All you need to do is dial 844-861-5203. You're also welcome to take out your smartphone. Simply scan that QR code in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. That will simply take you over to a landing page, ask you a few simple questions, and then a member of Compass Retirement's team will reach out to you to schedule your time to come in and meet with Scott and Angela and their team for no cost, no charge, no obligation. When we come back, we're going to be diving deeper into how do you take the money that's in the taxed always bucket and move it hopefully over to that taxed never bucket. You're not going to want to miss it. Stay with us.
As a good saver, you've been putting away money during your working years. Studies find that the biggest fear of retirees is running out of money. Market volatility isn't just the downward movement of stock prices, it's the size and frequency of change. The more dramatic the ups and downs, the higher the volatility. This can put savers who are newly retired or a few years away from being retired at greater risk. Today's generation of retirees is not receiving traditional pensions as our parents or grandparents did. Instead, we have retirement accounts such as 401ks or 403bs. These accounts typically expose your money to market risk. The last thing you want right before retirement is to lose a portion of the money you need for income. But how do you turn these accounts into a retirement income? Is it safe to keep all your retirement money sitting in the stock market? The last thing you want is to lose a portion of the money you need for income due to market loss. By working with a financial professional, you can learn how to turn a portion of your savings into an income stream for life and income for the life of your spouse if you're married. We all have moments in our lives when we wish we had taken action sooner. Don't let procrastination reign on your retirement parade. Act now before it's too late. Please call our office to set up your no-cost, no-obligation retirement income review today.
Welcome back to Retire Simply DFW. I'm your host, Kristin Oakley, here with Scott and Angela Winstead, co-founders of Compass Retirement. We are talking today about this all-important question of should you pay taxes now versus later. So my next question for you all is, what are some of the questions people should be asking themselves to help determine whether they should be paying taxes now versus later on the majority of the different accounts they've saved up for retirement?
You know, Kristin, in retirement planning, there's very few just permanent rules that, hey, no matter how old you are, no matter your goals, this is the way to do it. Okay, but so when we're talking about going from that taxed always to that taxed never, it's not always appropriate for everyone. So there are some questions we have to be asking ourselves. I think the first one is, at the most root cause of it is, what the heck do you think taxes are going to do in the future? Go up or go down? And most people would tell us, well, I think they're going to go up. And we would tend to agree, right? Last I checked, we have this huge debt in this country. I mean, $31 trillion.
And counting.
And counting, right? Put the debt clock up and it just keeps going.
Right.
You know, so at some point, from kind of a, let's say, an economic perspective, right? We got to do some things to get out of debt.
Yep.
One way that we get out of debt, I remember being back in college and economics professor says, hey, here's one way you get out of debt is you can print money and kind of flood the economy with money to try to get out of debt. And when we do that, when we do that, you know, we cause a big spike in inflation. So right now we're doing that experiment in this country, and I would argue it's probably not going real well for a lot of folks.
No.
Okay, so that's one way to get out of debt. Second way to get out of debt, though, quite simply, is just to raise taxes, right? So if we believe taxes are going to be higher in the future, and we would decide, hey, I want to probably, you know, control the tax rate, maybe it makes sense for me to take money today out, right, and pay less tax on that money today and get it over to that tax never bucket. And the thing we have to remember about taxes, right, is it's not a dollar amount that you pay, it's a percentage of the dollars that you have. So, for instance, you know, sometimes people have to also ask themselves, like, you know, well, what's my income going to be in the future?
Right.
Right? You know, well, my income is going to go down. Well, how much is it going to go down? And in the confines of the tax bracket that you're in, is it going to go down enough to lower the bracket that you're in? Or is it just going to go down, but you're in the same tax bracket?
Which means now you're paying a higher percentage of your income.
You got it, absolutely.
Yes.
So if we think about this, let's say I'm in a tax bracket, Angela and I, right, we're married.
Right.
And we're married filing jointly. And let's say I'm making $150,000 total, okay? And our tax bracket, the 22% tax bracket, goes from $90,000 to $190,000.
Right.
Okay, so while we're working, we're making $150,000. Then we retire, and our income drops down to $100,000. Well, I'm still above 90, right? So I'm in the same tax bracket, even though my income went down.
Right.
And so one of the things we have to ask ourselves is, what does the income look like forward projecting? And do we believe it's actually going to be a lower percentage of tax in the future? And for most people, the way the tax code is written, you're not going to drop a tax bracket. You're going to kind of stay where you are in terms of your income. So then we ask ourselves, well, if taxes are going to go back up, hey, my income may stay the same, I'm probably going to end up paying more, right?
Yep.
So you want to just kind of walk through some of these very basic questions to see, does it make sense for you or does it not?
Right. Well, what I love about what you do at Compass Retirement as well is most folks are very familiar with tax preparation, right? Getting our taxes in every year. We're used to trying to figure out, okay, how can we maybe lower our taxable liability for that year? What you do and what you specialize in doing is engaging in strategic tax planning, looking ahead to the future, helping folks navigate all these complexities, because as we always say on this show, how you make a decision in one area of your financial life does and will affect all of the others. And so one of the other things that folks have to take into consideration for strategic tax planning is that favorite acronym, which I know we've talked about on previous shows, RMDs. So Angela, talk to us a little bit about that and what people need to understand as that relates to this important question of should I pay taxes now or later?
Yeah, so that RMD, you know that we sometimes say rotten, miserable, and disgusting,
Yes.
but really what that means is, and what that is, in case you're not remembering, is when we turn a certain age in retirement, all of those accounts that we haven't paid taxes on yet, like the 401ks and the IRAs and the 403bs, the government's going to force distributions out. And those distributions continue to go up and up and up each year that we get older. So one of the things that we often ask people when we're thinking about moving money from taxable money into the never taxed bucket is, hey, when you retire, and you're maybe 80 years old, did the government tell you what that tax rate would be? Right? And so it gets us thinking about that future self, which is really important in retirement. And I know it's a different way of thinking, but it's the way that we have to think in retirement.
Right.
So when we're working with people, what we find for the most part, if they don't do any planning or any restructuring, they tend to have a lot less money in their 80s, and this is what I mean. Because those required minimum distributions continue to go up.
Right, because it's based on your life expectancy. That's part of the calculation,
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely. Your Social Security is taxed in a unique way. It's taxed based on how much taxable income you have. So if our required minimum distributions are taxable and they keep going up, it looks like our income keeps going up. And so our Social Security payment is down due to the fact that it's taxed more. Then what also happens is our Medicare premiums are based on how much income we have. So the more income we have, the higher they raise our rates. So a lot of people, if they don't address this, are going to get less money in their 80s than they do in their 60s. And that's what we absolutely want to help people avoid.
For sure. And I know another thing you're really passionate about that folks need to take into consideration is that if someone's married, they have a partner, and that spouse passes away, well, now you are bumped up to a higher tax bracket typically, because no longer are you married filing jointly, you're now filing singly. So then that just, adds another layer of tax liability.
It does, and it really compounds the issue, because very few people that become widowed want to take a hit to their lifestyle while they're grieving. Right? They still want to be able to do the things that they were doing and, live the way they were living so that they can go through that grieving process. Well, what happens is when you jump from that married filing jointly bracket to that single bracket, which is the most taxed person in our tax code, it causes all sorts of problems and issues. And so again, as we help you plan with Retire Simply, we are talking and looking at these things because, quite frankly, some of the recommendations and the planning and the strategies we will implement isn't necessarily for you today. It's for you 20 years from now. And we have, even though we're not retired, we have a lot of experience. We have done it vicariously through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of families that we have served in the Metroplex. So we always tell folks, nothing's going to happen in your retirement we haven't seen or prepared for. So we're going to help you plan with looking through the windshield and not so much the rearview mirror.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I would say if you are looking to look in that windshield and not the rearview mirror, and you want someone that's going to be able to help prepare for your 70, 80, 90-year-old self, we can help you take care of this stuff now. We do this every day. It's not complicated for us, and we thrive on breaking it down into really easy to understand pieces so that we can make great decisions together. So if you are 3 to 5 years out from retiring, or maybe you're already retired and you still want some help, you've saved over $300,000 or more, this is the perfect kind of planning to just check in and see if you've got everything in place that you need. And if not, we can help you put it in place. So pick up that phone, give us a call, let us help you retire simply.
Angela, Scott, thank you so much. To our viewers at home, we are going to take a quick commercial break, but this is an excellent opportunity to do something that your future self will thank you for. Pick up the phone and call that number on the bottom of your screen, 844-861-5203, so that you can come in and get your own complimentary Retire Simply plan for no cost, no charge, no obligation. Scott and Angela and their team will sit down with you, help figure out some of these questions to determine what would be best for you when it comes to strategically planning for your taxes in retirement. When we come back, we're going to talk about some more strategies that can be employed to help you navigate these complexities and figure out this question of should you pay taxes now versus later. More after this.
The work never seems to end until the day it finally does. After nearly a lifetime on the job, you should be rewarded for all the time you spent working. Whether that's crossing off items on your bucket list, learning a new passion, or rekindling the love of an old one. After all, life isn't over when you stop working. It's the start of an all-new chapter, the one where you're the writer and you get to choose how your story will go. A way to achieve that is by having a clear financial plan to sustain your golden years. The biggest fear most retirees have is if they'll have enough money to maintain the lifestyle they've always enjoyed. Having a plan to help protect you against the curveballs life often throws will help to maintain your lifestyle. Call today to get your free written financial plan so you may live every day to the fullest and enjoy the retirement of your dreams.
Welcome back to Retire Simply DFW. I'm Kristin Oakley here with Scott and Angela Winstead, co-founders of Compass Retirement. We are talking today about how to pay less to the IRS. We don't want you to have to pay any more than you're required to pay, and that's why you are so passionate about helping folks engage in strategic tax planning. So let's shift now and talk about some of the specific strategies that you're able to employ to help folks navigate this important question of should they pay taxes now versus paying taxes later, and how to really plan strategically for their tax liability in retirement.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think at the most basic level, folks understand, hey, I've saved a bunch of money that the IRS is going to come for their pound of flesh, right?
Right, yep.
And my goal would be to get it in a place where I'm all done with the IRS, so they're not my biggest business partner in retirement, right? And so there's a couple of ways to go about that. And let's just start with one of the most familiar tax-free types of accounts called a Roth IRA.
Okay. Yep.
Now, again, let's kind of take a very level-set conversation here. It's the type of an account when you put the money in, you don't get to deduct anything off your taxes, right? And you get to invest that money. And when it grows, you don't pay any income taxes. And when you take the money out, you don't pay any income taxes. And when you pass that money on, whoever inherits it doesn't pay any income taxes.
It's part of that tax never bucket.
That's right. And it also, as Angela was mentioning prior, does not have that RMD, which means if you don't need money out of there, you can just leave it, okay? So the goal is, okay, can I get more money over there? Now, most people are really familiar with one way to get money into a Roth IRA. And they're familiar with something we call a contribution. Now, what a contribution says is, hey, I'm going to take, $7,000 out of my bank account, and I'm going to go deposit it into my Roth IRA. And if you make under a certain amount of money, you can do that.
Right.
If you make over a certain amount of money, you cannot do that. So that's one way to get money into the tax never bucket. Where we spend a lot of time, though, is helping folks get money into that Roth IRA through the second way. And that's called a conversion. So contribution versus conversion. What is a conversion? Real simple. I take money that's taxed always, my IRA, and I convert or I move a portion to my tax never bucket, my Roth IRA. And anybody can do that regardless of age, regardless of income status, regardless of work status. Anybody can sign one piece of paper and convert money over there. But here's the catch. Whatever you move into that Roth IRA, that year you have to report that as income and you pay taxes on that.
Right.
So one of the things we help folks look at is say, okay, here's how much I've saved in this taxed always bucket. And then we help you look at your last year's tax return. Now, we don't go line by line with you. We just focus on a couple of key points on there, right? We have software that we use that goes through it line by line, but we just help you look at a couple. And really what we say is, okay, remember that bracket for married filing jointly that was $90,000 up to $190,000, that 22% bracket? Well, Kristin, you only made $100,000 last year. What if we look to move another $90,000 to get right up to the edge of that 22% bracket, which you're already in, and move that money over to your Roth IRA. You're paying the same percentage in tax. So it's not hurting you to move that money over there.
Right.
And so a lot of times we recommend that. We call it, because we're in Texas in the Metroplex, we call it leaving meat on the bone, right?
I like
we all
that,
like, yeah, big T-bone, big ribeye, right? We don't want to leave
sense.
we don't want to leave meat on the bone.
Right.
We want to be maxing out the top end of that bracket without spilling over into a new bracket.
Right.
And we go through very methodical processes to show folks this and simulate what that looks like before they ever make the decision. You'll know how much we should move. You'll know what it'll do to maybe your Social Security and Medicare premiums. You'll know how much tax you're going to owe, right? So we do all of this on the front end so there's no surprises. Then when we go back, and I know in past episodes we talked a lot about risk, right?
Yes.
Well, that tax never bucket, that's the one you want to be taking all the risk in, because you never have to take the money out unless you choose to, and all the growth is tax-free.
Yes.
So when we talk about making sure we have diversification and tax planning and taking risk, that tax never bucket is a great one to press the pedal to the metal to try to get a lot of growth in.
It makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So smart.
Yep. And
Yeah.
I'd like to share a little bit about that. You know, oftentimes when Scott shares about things, they sound simple and easy. And I love that. I do like to warn people a little bit, unless you are a pro and you have the same software that we have, you don't want to just be throwing money around from taxable accounts to tax-free accounts. You can end up pulling a lot of what we call tripwires or running into landmines if you don't know what you're doing. So yes, it's fantastic. We can help you do that. Just don't be willy-nilly about it. Make sure that you're working with someone that understands
For
that.
sure. I mean, translation, don't try this at home.
Yeah, I like to put a warning in there
Yes,
because
it's
it
important.
sounds smooth and easy, and it can
Well,
be.
because
just
you
have-
make it that way for folks.
Well,
That's the
and we
bottom
do it all
line.
day,
Yes,
right? I mean,
that's what you specialize in.
it's what we're great at.
Yep.
And, you know, it's one of those things where it makes such a big difference. And when you're talking about the amount of money a lot of people have saved in the Metroplex, this can be tens of thousands, if not
Yes.
hundreds of thousands of saved tax
Easily.
dollars just right back into your retirement, regardless if the stock market goes up, down, or sideways, right? So making sure we're focusing on this particular lever is so important, because that's where you make money when the stock market goes down. That's where you get lemonade out of lemons.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And I often, you know, when we're just talking about things, I like to talk about them in lots of different ways. You know, I've been in Texas for over 30 years, but I was born and raised in North Dakota, so I look at things from a farming perspective. I'll ask you this. You know, you can have a bag full of seeds. Do you want to pay tax on the bag full of seeds, or do you want to plant them in the fields, let them harvest, and owe tax on the whole bounty? To me, it typically makes sense to pay tax on the seeds. So if you want some help looking at this, coming up with some great strategies to make sure that your future self is taken care of, we want to help you pay the least amount of taxes that you possibly can over your lifetime. If you're 3 to 5 years out from retiring and you've saved $300,000, we're ready and we're here to help you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much to our viewers at home. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.